I think that the challenge that I've seen with professional services is that for so many, the way they've built their business is based on their own personal brand, right? So it's the individual relationships that they see driving business, especially when they're small. As they scale bigger and bigger, I think the brand plays more and more of a part in that process. And I know that's what we're going to get to in our conversation. Like, why is the brand important? But I think a lot of it is like I've never met any partner within a professional services firm, accounting firm, law firm, engineering firm, who doesn't believe that relationship is really, really, really important, right? Because
Right.
that's how they built their business. It was all relationship. It was all me building relationships with potential clients, and whether it was networking or speaking or writing or just working even in other businesses first and then jumping into your own and taking those relationships with you. Like that's how they've built their and scaled their business. The challenge, I think, is that they don't necessarily always translate that to the brand itself and realize that like ultimately the client has to build a relationship with the whole firm, with the brand of the firm, rather than just with the brand of the person.
Hey, what's going on, brand storyteller? All right, welcome to the Storytelligent podcast. I'm your host, Bryce McNabb. You were just listening to Mike Jones. Mike is a branding expert working out of Arizona, specializing in the professional services industry. And he's going to introduce himself a little later. I felt like we've been talking a lot about storytelling, so the outward expression of your brand. And even in last episode 38, we talked to Gina Fong, who helped us understand how to glean customer insight, which was really helpful in looking outward so we can understand how to best communicate who we are to our ideal customer. So it's been a lot of like outward expression, outward looking. But I wanted to balance this out with the other half of brand storytelling, which is brand. So in this episode, we're going to start the second half of this series where we're going to begin to look inward and really start to understand the importance of brand, why we need a brand, what a brand actually is, what are these fundamental components of a solid brand. And in order to do that, I wanted to, again, bring an expert in who could really help us understand what is necessary for branding. So that's why I brought on my friend, Mike Jones. I met Mike about this time last year in Chicago. We were both speaking at a Prime Global event, and he is just a super great guy, very intelligent, very knowledgeable. The guy lives and breathes branding. So I felt like he would be a really good source of information to kickstart off this next series. Mike and I immediately jumped into our conversation. Whenever we get together, we can't be stopped. So we ended up speaking, we had an hour slated. We ended up talking for over an hour and a half. So I've broken up this episode into two parts. Today's episode is part 1. And then in 2 weeks on episode 40, we're going to be discussing part 2. But you're going to get a lot out of this episode. This episode is really going to help you understand why you need a brand, the role that a brand actually plays within a business context. And this is really going to be helpful if your niche is professional services or if you are currently serving clients, because as a brand storyteller, you are providing a professional service. So without further ado, here's Mike Jones.
People want to work with people first. And so the first relationship that matters, the brand needs to be there. So you can't just ignore it. You can't just discount it. But the brand of the firm is not how you introduce people to your firm. You introduce them through the person, but then you have to ladder the relationship from the individual partner or the individual associate, whoever they're working with, into the whole firm and the brand itself. And I think for large firms, there's incredible benefit to that, right? Because oftentimes what they're selling is not just one relationship. It's you get a relationship with everybody in our firm, with all these different specialties, with all these different niches that they're able to perform really well in. And you get this diversity of expertise that you can't have with one person. And so the firm's brand itself contains that expertise, that diversity of expertise. The challenge is like, okay, how do you differentiate that from every other accounting firm who also says the same things.
Right.
Right.
Well, and so what I'm realizing too, as I've been like crafting my own brand story, is understanding that because the business is so relational, they forget the purpose of marketing
Yeah.
itself. Because by the time they get to the point where now I need to leave you to consider this decision, I
Yeah.
need to give you something, that's when they start thinking of, I need a tool.
Yeah.
I need something to hand them.
Yeah.
And that just now becomes married to, well, I need marketing.
Yeah.
I need a sales enablement piece, a leave behind.
Yeah. And
And
even then
so,
it's still business development, right?
correct.
It's not really marketing.
Yeah.
It's like kind of too late for that in some
Yes.
sense. Sorry, I know maybe I'm jumping into what you're already
No,
getting
but
into,
it's just
but
that's it. It's like marketing tends to get trapped there.
Mhm.
And because it gets trapped there, I think the brand might not ever have an opportunity to flourish, and they probably train themselves to not see the reason for it.
Yep. Well, the brand, I think, for a lot of professional services firms is, well, it's perceived as just a container, right? It's just this box. I need to put a logo on everything, right?
Yep.
Because all the money goes one place, and it just makes things a little bit easier and more efficient for me as when I'm doing business development. If I'm the rainmaker within the firm, or I'm, one of the leading partners, and I'm bringing in the business, like I need something that establishes us as something more than just me. This brings a little bit of credibility, but
Yeah.
really we all know it's me. Like I'm the one bringing in the business. Now I think sophisticated accounting firms, sophisticated law firms, engineering firms, even construction companies, marketing agencies, even, right? They get that the brand has to actually mean something, and it has to stand for something much bigger than the individuals. It's like more than the sum of its parts. And so that's where like story comes in, which I know we're going to get to because that's what you live and breathe. Um, but I think there's like this element of like really just getting past this idea that marketing and business development are at odds with one another, or that one is subservient to the other.
I hate that whole
They're
mentality.
hand in
Keep going.
hand. And I hate to use this word because I love it in one sense because I think it actually gets it. It nails it really well. HubSpot has been using it a lot lately. And I know it's not their term. There's lots of people using it, but smarketing, right? It's sales marketing. It's a dumb term. I know everyone
So
giggles
stupid.
it's really dumb, but it captures the essence of it, which is that like for, especially I think for professional services firms, because so much is still contingent on the individual relationship. So like, for instance, right, if I'm selling a candy bar, when's the last time I bought a candy bar or you bought a candy bar where the individual relationship with a person from the brand, let's say it's Reese's, right? I love Reese's peanut butter cups.
Love 'em.
I've never met a single rep from Reese's, but that's because their product is not predicated on an individual person to person relationship. It's a product relationship, right? The brand is everything, and there isn't really a whole lot of one-to-one. Now, some of that is also the way that consumer product goods are sold, right? They don't actually sell to me. Reese's doesn't sell directly to me. They sell to a distributor who sells to a retailer who sells to me, right? So the one-to-one relationship is actually with the retailer. That's actually where the human relationship lives. The product doesn't really need that relationship to work. But in professional services, the product is the people, right? And so you have to have a one-to-one relationship at some point. And I think for most professional services, going back to what I've already said, most professional services start through one-to-one relationships. It's like, it's how you build the business. That's how you scale it. It's me meeting you and selling you basically on me. And I happen to work for this larger firm, right?
Yeah.
And so the brand, I think the unfortunate part is like, okay, so we can weight it too far that way. We can say, oh, it's all about the one-to-one relationship. Really important, really, really important. And I recommend to every one of my clients that I work with, here are some books. One of them is Trusted Advisor, and it is all about how to build relationships with clients as an individual professional, right? It's not really about the brand. It's an extension of the brand, right? How you act, how you behave, how you treat your customer, how you treat your client is an extension of your brand. But it's a great book. It has nothing to do really with marketing. It has everything to do with how you serve your client. And I think that's incredibly important. I think that every single professional services firm has to be like, have some kind of focus on that, while at the same time also having a focus on how do we build demand through our brand, right? Our firm should be something more than just the sum of all of our parts. It shouldn't just be like, oh, there's 400 CPAs in my firm, therefore you get the combined knowledge of 400 CPAs. No, the reality is you have 400 CPAs who are doing something interesting because there's something unique about your intrinsic DNA as a firm, your culture, your processes, your focuses in terms of different industries or services, even your history, the way that you've developed over time, perhaps even your location, right? These are all elements of positioning that we need to look at in telling a great story that is different than everyone else's, right? Because part of telling a great story is it's your story, not someone else's story or just like someone else's story. And so how do we find what's unique about it and really tell that story? Obviously, my firm really focuses on like the visual side. We do a lot on the verbal side as well, in terms of telling the story verbally. And then, the fun stuff is like when you get into what you do, like videos and all that fun stuff.
But even to jump on what you were just talking about, because a lot of clients that I'll work with too are B2B clients.
Mm-hmm.
And so these will often happen to be like corporations with massive sales teams. And so the company may have even started as like, back in its origin as that one-to-one, but then they built up their sales staff and their sales team. So it continues that one-to-one relationship because it's inherent in how they go out and build business.
It's a sales first mentality, right?
But by not providing that brand, they've now opened themselves up to risk because that salesperson leaves and you haven't established that brand relationship with the client. They take them with them.
And 9 times out of 10, they take them with them, right? Like in, kind of the advertising marketing world that I've lived in my entire career, right? Like every friend of mine who's ever worked in an agency who's gone out on their own took their clients with them. And not even because they necessarily like said, I'm leaving and I want to take all my clients with me, but because the clients go, I'm here for you. Like you're the reason why I work with this agency. Yeah, I've built the relationship with you. I love the work that you do. I love the relationship that we have. Why would I mess that up? You're going to go on your own, or you're going to go to another agency. I'm coming with you.
We jumped right into this. And
go ahead.
We need to introduce you first. I knew we were going to just get completely carried away here. All right. So, Mike, go ahead and just introduce who you are. Help me understand, like, who are you? What do you do?
Well, that's a complicated answer if you want the full story. But the short answer, I'm Mike Jones, CEO and managing partner of Resound. We're a brand consultancy, particularly for professional services firms based out of Phoenix, Arizona, although we got people all over the place. And I've been doing this my entire career. I've been working on branding and brands and brand identity for really it's been 20 years, actually, like basically since I was 18, in some way, shape or form, I've been doing it. So started, working on like little friends and family projects, helping people stand up their businesses. I was in a band for a while, so I did a lot of branding for our band, our album covers and our posters and stuff. And I thought maybe that would be a direction I go. So I picked up a couple other clients in the entertainment industry. But eventually got into a couple agencies actually, and was doing all B2B branding and marketing, and originally doing a lot of graphic design. That's kind of my core, kind of my entry into marketing, but really loved the identity side of things, really helping organizations uncover what is unique and true about them and what really makes them like authentically different in the marketplace. How do they serve their customers and their clients really well? And we've applied that over the last 14 years with my firm, particularly with a lot of professional services firms, accounting firms, law firms, a few others. And I've written a book about it. I speak about it all the time. I love coming on podcasts and having more kind of conversation stuff. But I live and breathe branding. That's what I do. Yeah,
You
there it
are
is.
remarkable. Great book. Oh my gosh. I love this book. I like ate this in about a weekend, which is difficult for me because I'm like got a little bit of ADD. I think I'm mildly dyslexic. So
Okay.
that's my dyslexia joke for you. But yeah, this
I
thing
love
was
it. I got it.
thank you.
It took me a minute. I love
But
that joke.
why did you, what was it about the identity aspect that you felt this strong connection to?
I think there's a couple things. One is like at the heart of identity is really building great relationships, serving people well, being authentically true, right? Um, and we do that like at a personal level. I think a lot of people, especially nowadays, I think maybe 10, 15 years ago when I started my firm with my business partners, that wasn't necessarily as true. I think there was still a lot of like fake it till you make it type mentality for a lot of individuals. You're working on your career and it's like, hey, let's kind of, I'm going to make myself look bigger than I am, look smarter, look more professional, more advanced, whatever it was, or even in my personal life, right? And I'm seeing that obviously in, I think, individual realm, like a lot of people are starting to really understand more of like, oh, I actually need to be who I actually am, because that's actually what serves people the best. That's not always the intention, I think, when people use the word quote unquote authentic.
I was about
And
to say
I was a little,
authenticity. Yeah.
we were all, my two co-authors and I, who are my business partners, were a little hesitant to like use that word too much, because it's kind of taken on a little bit of a kind of negative connotation of like, I think sometimes people use that word as like an excuse to just be a jerk. It's like,
Okay.
well,
Yeah.
I'm authentically being myself by just being overly direct, maybe having a really strong opinion and not caring
You get
about the
into the I speak my
other.
truth territory.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I also question, and this is getting a little off topic here, but we'll bring it back.
Okay.
Uh, I also question whether someone who says like, I'm just being my true self has really done the homework to know whether they're really being their true self, or are they just purely expressing their emotions without a filter.
Right.
Authenticity is not just unfiltered expression. That's actually the opposite of what I'm advocating for and what I advocate in the book, particularly with organizations. It's like, no, the first step is thoughtful, deep kind of uncovering of who you as a firm actually are. What is your unique, authentic DNA of what makes you you and not any other firm? And then let's strategically and intentionally tell that story through visuals, through words, through all sorts of other media.
Now, why is uncovering that? Why is that important?
I think there's a couple levels to that. One is, if you're in the business of serving people, and I would argue every single company is in the business of serving people. Like, that's why you exist. You might not agree with me. You might say it's money. You might say it's like, well, we have this cool product. You might say like, we're just really smart. Okay, get over your ego. That's the first thing, right? You're not as smart as you think you are. You're not as differentiated as you think you are. Your product is not as good as you think it is. I guarantee you it's not, right? The people that matter, the opinions that matter, the voices that matter are your customers, right? They're the ones who either get value from what you do or they don't. And if you're not in the business of serving them and delivering value, I mean, that's ultimately what every business is in the business of doing, delivering value, and exchange, you get a reward, right? They pay you for it, right? Maybe they even talk about you. They advocate for you. They spread the word around for you. But you're in the business of delivering value, right? And you're serving people by delivering value. So if you are being something other than your authentic self as a firm, if you're copying someone else in your industry, if you're just kind of, you put it half-assing it, right, with the brand, and just like, wow, we did the logo, we got it done as quick as we can, we sketched it out on a napkin, threw it at like some designer on the team who's never designed a logo before, picked a couple colors because they're, the founder's favorite college sports team's colors, right? Okay, like you did something, I guess. But you half-assed it. I'm sorry. Pardon my French there, but like you didn't actually do it well. You are trying, that proves to me, it proves to everyone you don't really care, right?
It could
And
also
so,
show that there's almost like an unconscious decision making happening there,
yes,
but you haven't done the deep work to figure out what is really driving those decisions deep down.
yes. And it's always this like pattern of why, right? So it's like, why did we pick that color? Well, because we really like, I went to Arizona State University, and so we love the colors, maroon and gold. I'm surrounded by ASU right in here in Tempe. They literally own like half the city. And their alumni are everywhere. But like, so, okay, that's fine. At some level, I think that's okay, depending on the context. Why do you like Arizona State University? Oh, well, I had this experience in college. Oh, well, that's interesting. What about that experience is unique or different? Why has that so informed you? How does that inform your business and the culture that you're building here? Right? Those are the questions I want to keep asking of, like, why, until we drill down to there are core fundamental beliefs driving your business and the decisions that you make in your business. Those are the things, those are your foundational pillars of your business, right? I've met very few businesses who at least care at some level about scale, about culture, about building something that's going to last, who don't at least put some thought into like core beliefs or values or pillars or whatever you're going to call them, right?
The way that I approach it is I approach it with this understanding that there is gold inside, and my job is to mine that gold. Yep. And then plate that gold across the entire organization.
Yeah, it's already there. We
Yep.
talk about that all the time with our clients. Like, your DNA is already there. It's just a matter of asking the right questions enough times to enough people that we start to get the true fundamental answers to what is that DNA? What does it look like? What does it sound like? Why does it matter? And then how do we craft communication tools to really bring that to life and make that as clear, consistent, and creative? Those are kind of like my three kind of pillars of brand. The more clear we are in our messaging, the more clear we are in our visuals, the more pointed we are, the more impact we can have. The more I can really get to you that this is our DNA. If it takes me 45 words to tell you my DNA, when I could tell you in 3,
right,
I'm not being clear. And 3 is memorable. 3 is easy to understand. 3 is easy to communicate to someone else. You're reducing friction again, but you're also creating impact. And then you have to be consistent. I got to do it over and over and over and over again. I tell my clients all the time, I want you to be bored of your branding. Like, I want you in 3 years to be, hey, Mike, can we just add one more color? Can we just do it a little bit different this time? And I'm going to be like, no. Here's the thing, like, your clients aren't bored. They don't see you as many times as you see you, right? And especially if you're on the marketing side of the firm, like, right, you're seeing the colors, you're seeing the fonts, you're seeing the logo, you're seeing like the same layouts, the same design. And there's some things you can change, you can mess around with, right? But like, I would want to stretch that. I want to be like, I'm going to drag your boredom out as far as I possibly can in terms of you internally being kind of, I want to add something. I'm a creative. I want to like do something a little bit different. Be like, how long can I make you go until you just finally break and be like, okay, we're doing something a little bit different, right? Because the reality is, the minute you do something different, you're adding something new that your customer, your client has never seen before. They're used to using purple. It's on everything you do. It's been there for years. That brings a level of like satisfaction. It brings a level of trust. It brings a level of identification, right? Like every time I see the purple, I think of you, right?
Yeah.
With your client. And they're not seeing your purple like every single second of every single day like you do, right? And so like there's an element of like you're bored because you have to look at it all for so many hours every single day, but no one else does. And so they're not bored like you are. But like, okay, you got the purple, we're adding orange, and they've never seen orange before. Somewhere inside there's like subconscious, they're gonna go like, like, what is that? Where'd that come
Yeah,
from?
it's going to create
I
dissonance.
don't maybe I don't mind it. They go together, it's fine. Like, but like, why? Why is that there? What does that mean? Right. And if you haven't communicated what that means or why you're doing it, or you don't infer it, right, in how you're doing it, then you got to build up that trust again, because you've left the realm of consistency.
Yeah.
And then the last piece is creativity, right? And these all have to work together. So like you can be really clear and really consistent and incredibly boring and uninteresting, right? And let's be honest, working with a lot of accounting firms, law firms, like that's probably where they kind of lean, is like, all right, we're going to be, I don't know if they're all very clear. They're all pretty consistent. And you know, most of them have marketers who are really good at their jobs, and they keep it really consistent.
I love how you're like, they're consistently confusing and boring.
Yeah. But I mean, that is part of it, right? Now, if your brand, if the truth is your DNA is like, we're kind of like, we're the boring group. Okay, let's find something interesting about that. Like maybe there's some reason why you think you're boring.
Right.
Maybe it's like, we don't like change. We like to just nail it. We are the details people, and we just consistently nail the details. If you're an accounting firm, that might not be a bad idea, right? Like your clients might really appreciate this. Like year in and year out, the tax returns come back and they are flawless, right?
Yep. What is a brand?
Yes, we should talk about a brand. I summarize your brand as it's your identity as an organization, right? It's the totality of what you believe and how you interact with the world, right? So if you think about an individual person, your identity is your worldview, right? The internal side of you and how that is expressed externally. Some of that comes out in things like somewhat superficial or less deep things, like the clothes that you put on in the morning, right? The way that you talk, the expressions that you use in your language. These are aspects of your identity, but there's a much deeper truth to your identity in terms of like how you perceive the world, how you look at it, the do's and don'ts that you have in your life that you have established in yourself, and say, this is how I live and this is how I don't live. Every company has the exact same set of rules. They're often just not very well defined, and they're often a little bit squishy, right? And some of that has to do with the fact that organizations are made up of people. And so a whole group of people with all their own individual identities, you're going to have to find some level of like commonality amongst them to discover the firm or the organization's identity.
A lot of what you're expressing in the book is a lot about like individual expression. Mm-hmm. But I feel like there's almost a, especially in crafting stories too, I find that I balance three different expectations. There's the self-expression of the organization and their goals and what they want to accomplish. There's the story subject, the person whose story I'm telling, and then there's the audience expectations. So one thing that I didn't see in here is like, how do they balance audience expectations within your industry? Because you don't want to stand out too much, because there's almost like you kind of have, from my perspective, you can choose to agree or disagree. I would love to understand your perspective on this, but I feel like you have to be tethered enough to look familiar enough. So that way I think in terms of movies. So I think in terms of genre conventions, you should have a sort of design style that looks similar and familiar, but is distinct to your brand personality. So it's almost like you have to balance those things. And I would expect that you find something similar in accounting firms, that you can't just make an accounting firm look like a video game or something. Like,
no, I think, well, I can think of scenarios where I might, right?
Yeah.
If the firm's culture is a bunch of video game nerds who sell accounting to video game nerds, I'm all about it, right?
That
So
makes
it's like
sense.
and this comes back to like your identity is not just about you in a self-serving way. It's about how do I deliver as a firm. Our identity is about how do we deliver value to others in a unique and valuable way to the audiences that we work with. And one of the questions we always ask is, who do you work with best? Because that often leads to an understanding of your own identity, that there's something unique about our particular strengths, our particular aptitudes, our particular interests as a firm. Our culture is uniquely suited to certain types of other organizations, other businesses, or other individuals.
All right, everybody. I hope that was valuable. I hope you enjoyed that conversation. Again, this is part 1 of our conversation with Mike. We're going to visit Mike again in episode 40, where we're going to be talking about the kind of core components of what makes up a strong brand and what are these elements that you need to build your brand identity. But I hope today's conversation gave you a really good insight into the importance of a solid brand and what exactly a brand is. If you liked what we talked about, definitely check out Mike's book, You Are Remarkable. I'm not lying. I love this book. It is super helpful. I've got the thing just like bookmarked and several pages just ridiculously underlined. Like, it is completely marked up. It is such a valuable resource. So if you're wanting to get more into branding, into the brand strategy part, this book is a great crash course to help elevate your skills in that area. As always, you can find me at brycemcnabb.com or storytelligent.com, whichever you prefer. So if you'd like me to come speak at your next event, come in and provide training or workshop for your team, reach out to me at brycemcnabb.com. I provide training, workshops, coaching, consultations, the works to help you clarify your brand story and then really communicate exactly who you are so people understand not just who you are, but why they need you. If you want to bring your brand story to life, you can reach out to me at mcnabbstorytelling.com. That's my agency side, where we specialize in authentic documentary-style videos as well as content campaigns. Thank you so much for tuning in to Storytelligent. I will see you in the next one. Take care.